Sweet.
Welcome, Jay Rainville, to the pod.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Happy to have you, man. It's
I feel like I'm looking at what my divorce will look like.
why?
Like a bachelor apartment.
Yeah, it's not even a bachelor, bro. This is a fucking what is this? A studio technically?
Really? That's what
Yeah.
they call that?
That's
okay.
yeah. Because I'm an artist, bro.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. This is how artists live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a tiny apartment, and that little walk-in. We actually have that technically could be considered a den. The way that things are these days.
Oh, dude. Yeah. The things that people will consider a den
I know.
is outrageous.
Literally, like a fucking cabinet. They'll consider it a den. And it's so this place actually we got, like, you asked me how long I've been here. 2 years basically now. Call
coming
it
up.
2 years.
Yeah.
And I'm renting it out for under 2,000, which is insane for this area. Like the same type
Yeah.
of apartment here now in this area, just call it downtown Toronto in general.
Sure.
Is 2,500
For something like this.
for something like this. So
Yeah.
I looked on the website for this studio, the exact same
Yeah.
ones in this building, is 2,500 now.
Holy shit, man. Like, I remember, I want to say 2005, 6, I was renting a 3-bedroom apartment. Now, this is in North York.
Yeah,
And it was like $13.50.
that's insane.
And then I had 2 roommates and we split it. And I had the master bedroom, which was just the biggest bedroom.
yeah,
And
yeah,
we had like
that's-
a bathroom and a half.
yeah, it's
And a
unbelievable,
drum set.
man. And a drum set.
That's right.
That's
yeah,
key.
we were not popular amongst the other tenants.
No, it's unbelievable what, like, and also, yeah, like the drum set. We woke up this morning and there was like construction and like hammering going on all over the place. So I don't know. I want a bigger place and a house. Man, fuck, I miss Texas. I want to go to Texas.
Yeah, are you angling your way there?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have the credits or the wife input
Yeah.
buy-in
Yeah,
to make that move yet.
That's fair.
I gotta
Yeah.
get out to I do want to get out to Austin in the near future.
Just to visit at least.
Yeah,
But like,
absolutely.
I don't know. I've been to Austin and LA now and New York, not to do comedy, but just to visit.
Yeah.
And nowhere I've been kind of hit me like Austin for some reason. Just the vibes you get there when you're there. And I spent the longest time there. I was there for about just under a month. And just walking around, the people, the general feeling I got, the livability kind of like didn't strike me as much anywhere else other than Austin. I just felt like
I feel like it seems like New York. I was in New York a couple years ago.
Keep going.
Yeah. I was in New York a couple years ago, and I was not like super thrilled with seeing people urinate
Yeah.
on the sidewalk. Like, it wasn't, and it's muggy there too, like Toronto is.
Yeah.
It's very like it wasn't great in the summer. I mean, yeah, there's lots to do and see, but like to live there full time. But I've heard the stand-up scene there is so big that there's open mics and other comics that you'll just never meet. It's that big.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think I've come to realize that Toronto isn't. And okay, look, there's places like, again, New York is a classic example where comedy is not just a thing to do in a big city. Kind of like here, it's a big city and comedy exists. There is
Yeah.
a scene, but there it's kind of like the major leagues, right? Like,
Yes, very much so.
so people will go there to visit, and on their bucket list of things to do is like visit the Cellar or
Yeah.
whatever, right? The Improv, where that's not a thing here. Nobody comes to Toronto and says, "Oh, we want to go to the Lab."
No, I mean, I think Canada in general, we don't have like a culture of comedy.
Right.
I don't like especially when you're going to do out of town shows and stuff like that, it's almost like a novelty.
Yeah.
Let's go see the comedy show because there's something finally happening in our small town. Right? They're not necessarily like comedy people.
Yeah.
But I also think, and I've heard other comics say this, like I think Ryan Long had said this, which is that like Toronto is a tough city for comedy.
Oh yeah.
Right. Like I think we have tough crowds, and I think if you want to do well here, you need to be like really good.
So that's what I was saying. Why I've come to realize that it's really a blessing in disguise, because now that, especially that JFL's gone, it's a beautiful place to get better in the shadows, kind of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's where I'm kind of not. I'm also not eager to get out to Austin,
Yeah.
right? Like I just hit 3 years,
Yeah.
right? I got plenty of time,
For sure.
right, to get polished, to get more material under my belt, and I'm good, right?
Yeah,
I don't.
and just the crowds are tough, but also the level of talent in Toronto is very very high. Like the
Yeah.
competition is also, if you can do well here, if you can stand out here, you can do well anywhere, and I truly believe that.
Yeah.
Having visited all these scenes and seen what the U.S. has to offer in general, like the competition here is just as good. It's just harder to get through, and it almost makes it better. All these crazy all these crazy insanely talented people are here and nobody knows about them, and you're just doing shows with them on a nightly basis, and that has to make you better.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's just it, right? You need to. It's. I remember Mark Norman was talking about Louis C.K. like seeing him and saying, "Oh, like you earned that joke," because this is before Mark Norman was really big. Whereas with Louis, he's kind of got that cult of personality behind him, where like they just love Louis,
Right.
So, or why Eddie Murphy quit comedy, because he could say anything and they would laugh.
Yeah.
Right. Where it's like every time you got to go out and earn it because you're in front of a brand new group of people who've never seen you before. So it's really, your performance is going to rest on the strength of your material, the strength of your ability to perform, and you got to earn it every single time. It's like freaking 50 first dates.
Yeah, I've always wondered, like, and I've asked some people this that have like more of a following, that how do you know at that when you reach that level? Which, don't get me wrong, everybody wants to reach that level, but like, how do you know whether it's you or like if you're truly earning the laughs? If you have a huge fan base that's there at every single show, how do you know whether they're, because like I've done shows with some people that their fans are there to see them, and no matter what they say, they will get the laughs, right?
Does that exist in Canada? Is there
No.
anybody who has that?
No,
I don't.
but
Yeah,
that absolutely exists in Austin.
Oh,
and LA.
I'm sure it does.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know if that's like a question that's worth asking.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? Actually, like, I've realized, like, a place like the Mothership, like, people say that the laughs there are very, they're almost spoon-fed to you, which is true. But then at the same time, for the people that are doing shows at the Mothership, like all those headliners that you see, like, and Friends, right?
Yeah.
Those kind of, the people that have earned that position and have that fan base, the Mothership is a perfect place for them to practice, because that's the environment that they're used to. They're not going to do, realistically, right? Like Shane Gillis or Tony, they're not going to go to a shitty bar show and have to deal with that. They're much more, they're going to do many more shows that are like a Mothership atmosphere, where their audience is there to see them, and the environment is meant for them to kind of succeed, right?
Yeah, I mean,
whereas for guys like you and me, it's not as good to practice so much in that kind of environment, and we have to earn our laughs. You know what I mean?
yeah, and what I've noticed, even what we would call a pro here in Canada or in Toronto, the shows that we kind of really look forward to, like, oh, like I got on the show, I'm going to do my very best.
Yeah.
Like the people who are higher up the food chain than us, like that's their open mic.
Yeah.
Right.
True,
That's
true.
where they're going to do their new stuff that they've been working on, where they can give that new material the best chance it has is at success, opposed to doing it in a bar that's only full of comics who are just waiting their turn and could give a shit about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what got you into comedy? I know you started. It's in your act, right? You started when you were 38.
I started when I was 38. I'm 41 now. I mean, I always wanted to be a comic. I said I wanted to be a comic when I was 8 years old. Like I did theater when I actually got into university for theater. Like
Nice.
That's what I really wanted to do. But a couple things scared me off. Like there's an episode of Fresh Prince. I think it's with Chris Hughley, is that his name? Anyway, there's a comic who was on Fresh Prince, and the story is basically Will gets put on a stand-up show because he's like being funny in a waiting room,
Right.
and then he like goes up on stage and like starts making fun of Carlton, and he bombs.
Yeah.
And so that episode kind of showed me that like stand-up was more than just being a funny person in real life.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the other story was there was a friend of ours who's moved away, but like this friend of ours said, oh, I want to do stand-up sometime. And we baited him into doing stand-up. And we said, oh, we'll do a competition. We'll see who does best. We'll all go. But then we just tricked him and made him go.
Oh, yeah.
And then he bombed his face off, and then the rest of us didn't want to go. So I was just like, I don't want to actually try it now because this guy will wreck it for me.
Yeah.
He'll get revenge on the prank that we based on the prank that we did. And I think like when you go through life being the funny guy, it's not. I'll be honest. I think I was just scared. I was scared for a long time to do it. I think right, like that's if your identity is based on being the funny person. That's not something that you exactly want to fail at.
Yeah.
And I think, and also, like, I spent a lot of years in churches playing music. I kind of thought music was the thing.
Yeah, it's a way for you to get the performative aspect, like your
but it was just but it never. There was something about music that I never loved it enough to practice to become the type of player that I wanted to be.
Right.
And I never felt in any art form, because I also like paint on occasion. I never felt like I really had anything to say unless it was funny. Mm-hmm. Right. So when I started comedy, it was just like, oh, this I should have been doing this a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard, I think everybody that ends up doing a mic and honestly doing it for longer than that first mic, that anybody who does a second, third, and then eventually you catch the bug, right? Everybody has that feeling of, oh, this is what's been missing my whole life. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Like, I think I got my first version of like a kill, like a set that was consistently good all the way. I think set number 19 was that for me. Yeah. And I was like, oh yeah, like I gotta, like I'm dedicated to, like, I just want to be, I want to get to that tight 45 minutes that's full of applause breaks. Like that's, I want to be that comic. Like I want to be the very best that I can possibly be, like obsessed.
That's cool.
Like read every book, doing courses, like writing, like I just,
That's interesting that, and I know just from talking to you that you've read some comedy books, and I've seen you have like a notepad with like the number where you number by set, right? So you have a more analytical approach. I would say.
I mean, I like to. I just started tracking my sets, and then I'm just like, well, I'm like 500 deep now. Like, well, I'm not. Why would I stop?
True.
Why would I stop counting? And then my book is more. It's what I use to kind of prepare, to kind of like go through my bullets of like, oh, this is what I'm going to do tonight, and then anything that I'm thinking of in the moment, I can write it down and not forget it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. I don't write my jokes in a book.
By book, I meant there's an actual book written by somebody else that you reference. I remember you recommended it to me. What was
Oh yeah, so there's a few books that I recommend to other comics. The first one is called Jerry Corley is the guy who wrote it, and you can get his book on his website. It's called Breaking Comedy's DNA.
Oh, right. Okay.
I'm pretty sure that there are like comedy schools in the U.S. that use it as their like textbook.
Nice.
It's really good because it actually has meat in it in terms of like techniques on how do you write a misdirection joke? How do you write an incongruity joke? How can you do wordplay? Stuff like the listing technique. Like it actually has things that are useful that you can just do, mechanics, right? Because you're never going to go up there and be funny. Like even Bill Burr, I think he said like for his first like 5 to 7 years, it was just set up, punch, set up, punch, set up, punch.
Yeah.
Right. And so so he'll give you that. I think another book I always recommend is Greg Dean's Step-by-Step Comedy, I think is what it's called. And that one's really good, especially for like material generation. And then another one I like is called Jared Volay wrote a book called Playfully Inappropriate. And I think that's kind of more advanced, but that one's really good too.
It's interesting to me that you've been like, did you go to school for theater, you said, or?
No, I ended up going to Bible college instead.
Oh, Bible college. Okay.
That's right.
We're definitely going to put a bookmark on that and I'll get back to that. But that you from what I understand, you had some kind of artistic outlet your whole life, right? And you've been interested in either theater, music, or art in some way, and that you approach it, in my mind at least, when you have like a journal and you read books and you study the theory. To me, in my head, that's more of that's why I say an analytical approach.
Yes,
just those kind of tick the boxes, because I'm a trained chemist, so I went to school for something completely different, and I have the complete opposite view from stand-up. Whereas like I don't necessarily track my number of sets. I've never read a stand-up book. I just I watch my favorites do it. My favorite comics. I go out there and I think the best way to learn is by eating shit as much as possible and getting better.
Sorry.
It's all right.
Sorry.
I think we're all getting past. There's something.
Jeez Louise. Sorry.
It's all right.
It's to me, it's more. I think.
Which, and by the way, there is no right or wrong way to do it. There are greats out there that like you've probably listened to podcasts about your favorite, I don't know, 3, 5, whatever comedians, and they all have a different way that they approach it. There's no right way to do it.
No, I think so. I think for me, what I'm trying to do is expose myself to as many different ways of writing, of generating material,
Right.
of generating punchlines as possible, so I can develop my own process that I can like reliably go to to get material.
That's
right?
exactly it.
But there isn't a right or wrong way, but I think what you could say is that there is an efficient and inefficient way of doing it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because I think when you see guys who have been open micing for 10 years and they haven't really moved up the ranks or gotten better,
yeah.
right, then you can say that maybe how they're doing it needs to be changed. I talked about this with Danton on my podcast. There's this book called Peak, and they study people who like excel at anything, right? At music, at art, at whatever kind of skill set. How do they excel at it? And the two things that are essential are intentional practice. So like, I want to fix this, right? I want to get better at this specific thing with expert feedback. Somebody who's like coming in from an outside perspective to kind of correct and guide you in your journey to getting better at whatever it is that you're doing. So like Malcolm Gladwell had that book called Outliers, and it's like, all you need to do is do 10,000 hours and then you'll become an expert. But if you're practicing for 10,000 hours the wrong way, then you're not necessarily going to get better. And I think for me, there was a sense, because I was starting older and because I do take it very seriously, I think there was a sense of urgency that I wanted to get good quick.
I think the reason that I haven't had to do this is because all these things that you're saying, I've learned myself through. I've been playing sports at a competitive level my whole life.
Absolutely.
So that whole thing, like practice like you play, I've learned it through athletics, through like trying, failing, adjusting, and I'm applying all of that now from my master's degree to my experience in athletics to this thing that I finally feel like I actually want to pursue myself. Right? Because I'm still pretty young, so I'm only 25 now. So up until this point, I've tried a bunch of things, and I feel like to some degree, whether it's the reason that I went into chemistry, I love science, but like I have like, you know, Russian parents, they're always like doctor, lawyer, or fucking failure, you know? So I've done that to please them to some degree, and sports, they've obviously put me in, and I've loved a lot of sports that they have, but I've never wanted to be. So I did judo for a long time, and that wasn't my favorite thing. And then I found golf, which I liked much more, but I wasn't that good at because I started late. So I never found my thing. But I was still learning so much, like through my master's degree, through doing all these, I learned so much that now that I finally myself, through my own volition, found this thing, stand up, that I truly love, I'm finally able to apply those things and truly something that I'm actually passionate about, right? Which is a different. It's like you can't find a replacement for your own kind of motivation. If somebody tells you to do something, right, you know.
But I think it's one of the first. You know, I've had other comics where I talk about like finding a mentor, having somebody who to pour in, and they laughed at me, right?
No,
but it
was
was like
huge.
I know, but it's to me, it's more one of those things where I want to do this so badly, that I will hear the negative feedback if it means I can get better.
Yeah.
You know,
would you say you have a mentor?
I did. I don't say that we haven't met up for quite some time to the point where I'm like, maybe I need to find somebody who's more available.
But, you know, you don't necessarily need a mentor that you can structure yourself off of somebody that isn't one of your idols, that isn't necessarily someone you have to meet up with, right? By just seeking out information about this person and structuring your maybe path along his successes and failures or hers.
Just studying what other people did, like you know, Jim Carrey. I can't remember the guy's name, but there was when Jim Carrey was starting out in Canada, the only person who made it out was a guy who did impressions. So he's just like, okay, I guess I'm going to do what that guy did.
Right.
Yeah. So I think it was Rich Little, maybe I can't remember, but he was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do if that's the way or Schwarzenegger, right? Like Schwarzenegger was like, okay, the guy who left my tiny town or left my area became a bodybuilder, so I'm going to do that. That's good. If that's the thing that gets me out of here, then I'm going to do that. So definitely having a North Star, an example to follow is huge.
Absolutely. And I think that is actually really an important point that we brought up, the mentor thing. I never thought about it directly, but now that I think about having a mentor, I'm like, yeah, I definitely have somebody that has helped me out a lot.
Yeah.
And that is big. So that's pretty important. So let's talk about the what'd you say, Bible
College.
Bible
That's
college.
Right. Yeah.
So just explain.
Yeah, it's not very conventional, eh?
Yeah, that's interesting. Because I know you have, your whole podcast is centered around faith as well. You explore.
Yeah, well, it's more like, what should I tackle first, the podcast or the Bible college?
So that's how I knew the podcast. That's how I kind of discovered that you take your faith seriously, right?
No.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your evolution.
Sure. So
how did you get into Bible college and what happened?
So like the basis of it, I think because I'm a pretty like straight-laced looking like white dude, people assume that I was just raised in like a religious churchy household, but I wasn't.
Okay.
Like my parents never took us to church. I wasn't really raised with a faith background at all. On the odd occasion I'd go to like Catholic church with my grandmother, but like it was by no means anything that was like a part of my life.
Okay.
When I was 17, I did 10 grams of magic mushrooms and God showed up.
Yeah.
Right.
That'll do it.
Yeah. Really like turned the mirror on like how I was behaving, like just changed my perspective about my whole life.
When you were 17 too.
Yeah.
That's crazy because your brain at that point is far from developed.
Oh, so. Yeah. And at that point it was, I was just like, I'm going to do all these, like I didn't have any preconceived notion that was what was going to happen.
Did you ever do anything before the mushrooms?
I like smoke weed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Like I was a pretty rebellious teenager.
Okay. So I thought that was your first experience with any mind altering substance.
No,
whatsoever.
I tried a couple grams of magic mushrooms before that.
Yeah.
And actually, I didn't find that really anything happened.
Yeah.
So I'm like, so what really happened was I did 5 grams and I thought, I'm just going to see some hallucinations, have a good time, and then I go home.
Yeah.
And then in the middle of it, I took another 5 grams. And then, and so, like I said, like God showed up and just made me convinced that like God exists, that this God like knew me, loved me, like just changed how I saw myself and saw the world. And then it kind of just changed everything that I wanted to do. Like before that, like I wanted to be on SNL. That was my dream.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so instead I was just like,
and then your dream was going, Jesus.
I thought, yeah, like I just, I started to turn my life around, so to speak, and started making better decisions. And like, I got a job at a shoe store and one of the guys that worked there, like went to this church nearby.
Yeah.
And so because like I had become a Christian without like owning a Bible or like going to church or like doing any of those conventional things, like I kind of found God on my own. And then I started going and I really fell in love with church. And then I was just like, well, if I can help other kids who are like me, then like that's kind of what I think would be more worthwhile. And so like I could do music, and the church kind of does lots of different things. I was just like, well, I can kind of do lots of things that I love if I do this. So then I went to Bible college because I thought that was the road I was supposed, even though I had been accepted to university for theater. But then I realized pretty early on that I was not nice enough to be a pastor.
Okay.
Because like you have to realize evangelicalism in particular, it has a very distinct culture. Mm-hmm. Like they call it like speaking Christianese.
Interesting. I know nothing about this.
That's okay. And so when I went, I realized that like, oh, I was raised like watching The Simpsons and South Park and SNL, and all these kids I went to Bible college with, they weren't allowed to watch any of those shows.
Yeah. They
all said like fudge and gosh darn and stuff like that. And I realized that like culturally, I was just way out of sync with all of these people.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that they're kind of deceptive. Okay. In the sense of like if they need to give you bad news, they're not going to tell you directly. They'll they'll tiptoe around it. Yeah. Whereas I was
they'll make it like a Bible verse.
Yeah, like I was kind of just more direct, and like that really rubbed people the wrong way. And it's just I realized that I didn't think that I was like cut out to be a pastor.
Okay.
And so then I transferred all my credits and just got like a history degree because it's like, well, if I did want to work at a church, I could still use my history degree to do that, to like, study the Bible or something. Whereas if I have this Bible college degree, like I can't use that anywhere.
You can transfer credits from Bible college to like another college?
Some of them.
Okay.
Like the program that I was in at this Bible college, it was called Tyndale.
Yeah.
They had like this first year program where it was like you could do like Bible 101 and then transfer out to like somewhere else.
Yeah, because I would assume that, I guess especially a history degree, a lot of studying the Bible would involve like history.
I just opted for a history degree because like that just seemed like the simplest. I just wanted to get my degree and be done.
Sure,
I did not have any aspirations to do science or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'll just get my degree and get out. Like
Okay.
I got a 3-year degree. I just like got it over with as quickly as possible.
Awesome. Okay.
Went to York, didn't make a single friend. I just was in, out, done.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you do now?
But that was my life for many years, where
Yeah.
I was just like, I worked in churches as like a youth leader. Like I kind of like was like a mentor to like a group of like high school guys. And I did that in like at different churches, and I played in church bands and stuff like that. I met my wife in church.
Nice.
Like I was pretty hardcore. Like I
Yeah.
would have debated you that the earth was 6,000 years old, and like
Wow.
evolution isn't true.
That's so
and-
interesting.
Yeah, and like
And this was at what age approximately would you say was the peak of your
I had this like magic mushroom experience when I was like 17, and then by the time I hit 18, I was like full in.
Okay.
But I kind of
And when did that turn happen that you because from what I'm understanding, you kind of got into Bible college and then something.
so like when I was around 19, I realized, okay, maybe working in church is not going to be for me.
Okay.
But I still volunteered in church.
Yeah, so you
consistently.
started to kind of, 1 foot out the door.
I wouldn't say one foot out the door. I mean, I was still like a hardcore believer.
Okay.
For pretty much.
So just for some context for me to understand this story.
Yeah.
So what would you say you are now, right? Like, do you believe in evolution now, would you say?
Yes.
Okay.
What I tell people now is that I would call myself a Christian.
Okay.
But probably a lot of other Christians would say that I'm not.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So obviously at one point you were a full-on believer to the point
Yes.
where, and then slowly but surely you kind of, some things happened that slowly started to change your view on this. So I want to see that kind of evolution. What
Yeah, well, like a few heavy things happened. So
Yeah.
like when I first
you don't have to go into them, obviously.
No. I
yeah.
mean, it's fine. It's when I first started going to church, like, so the first thing about evangelical churches is they're huge on what's called a youth group.
Yeah, I've heard of that
right?
before.
Youth group is
obviously,
like when you're from pretty much grade 6 or 7 till you graduate high school.
Yeah.
You go to youth group, they have events, the youth pastor speaks, there's
Yeah.
music, and then you break into what's called small groups.
Yeah.
And so you divide up with like by gender, with like guys my age, and then you'd have like a youth leader who's like a few years older than you, who's kind of like your mentor. You'd talk about the Bible stuff, and
The youth groups are big. A lot
Yeah,
of organizations like to get them young,
yeah, and
Cadets,
then
Hitler Youth.
and
just
so
to name a few.
yeah, so my youth leader was this guy. For the sake of telling the story, I'll call him John.
Sure.
And John was like this guy who like just became, I come from a really bad home life. This
Sure.
guy became like my best friend, my mentor, my dad, my biggest fan, like
Nice.
became my world.
Yeah.
And everybody who ever met this guy like loved him. If you met him, you'd love him.
Yeah.
Kids would weep at the end when they were graduating because they knew that this guy wouldn't be in their lives anymore.
Oh wow. Okay.
And eventually he became a youth pastor at probably what would have been considered the biggest church in Ontario.
Okay.
Like the closest thing to like a mega church that Ontario has. And then out of nowhere, he's just like, hey, I'm letting you know, it's like the beginning of the school year, so it's like an odd time. He like calls us all to say like, hey, I'm stepping down. I'm not going to be a pastor anymore. I'm going to refocus on my marriage, blah, blah, blah. That's it. Kind of weird. And what would eventually come out is that he got fired and like told to resign because he was having an emotional affair with a girl who was like a year out of high school.
Okay.
And but then over time, what would really end up happening is, so he left his wife, ended up hooking up with this girl.
Yeah.
And then when that word about that got around, girls from the youth group started coming forward saying that John was having inappropriate conversations with them on the internet and paying them to make videos.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So he
got Me Too'd, basically.
Oh, he got beyond Me
big
Too.
time.
He got jail, like he did time.
Yeah. Which is interesting because I don't, like I said, I don't have a lot of experience with religion. I'm technically Russian Orthodox.
Yeah.
But I have very briefly. My family also, we like last time we went to church was for Easter maybe 5 years ago. But we go for like the big holidays, and
Yeah.
I very briefly had a stint as like somehow involved in the church as a kid, like as an altar boy or whatever. I don't even remember, it was so long ago in such a short stint. But I know that one of the pastors also from the Orthodox Church did jail time for similar reasons. So I know there's obviously a theme with this.
Yeah, but like this guy was like he was my best man.
Yeah.
Like he was my closest friend, and he went down for this stuff.
So that's obviously tough on you.
Yeah, and it's tough on me. And it was like, and at the, you see a lot of people leave church, like somebody dies in their life, or so they go through hard times, and they kind of blame God for it.
Yeah.
And that wasn't necessarily what happened with me. It was more just the fact that over time, my trust in the church as an institution just deteriorated.
Okay. Yeah.
That I just, and as you grow older, you realize like the guys who are the pastors and stuff like that, like you don't know, you just you just stop idolizing them, for lack of a better term, in the sense of like, you don't know anything more than I do. You don't have any secret relationship with God. You don't know, like, right? So like, why am I listening to you?
Yeah.
Why am I trusting you on like how I should live? Like, I think I'm competent enough, mature enough, old enough to know how to like run my own life.
Yeah, that's interesting that you went through that experience with the church, because I think like, I think normally like a healthy relationship with any kid with their parents is kind of like that, right? Like you start out when you're young, your parents are literally a God figure. Everything they say goes, right? And then as you get older and wiser, you realize that they're people too, and slowly, like in the healthiest possible relationship, you keep your respect and your love for them, but you realize that they slowly dissipate from this deity to just a person. Yeah, and eventually you start to care for them. So the roles.
No, I think I think you articulated that really well, because in a sense, I almost like when I started doing comedy and really just stopped doing the church thing at all, I just kind of like. I almost felt like I'm moving out. Yeah. Right? Because when I first, like, I'm really grateful for those early days in the church, right? Like the church put up with me when like the church was my home. Yeah. Because I came from such a broken one, that the church was like there for me when I had no one. At the time. Exactly. Yeah. It was what I needed at the time. But then around the time that like COVID and then in addition to that friend of mine, it was just like in the U.S., it's like pastor after big pastor going down. And it's like, it seems to have like, this is the process. They get a charismatic pastor who speaks on Sunday. Yeah. He's the reason why people come through the door and the money starts rolling in, which gives him a lot of power and influence. Yeah. And inevitably, he will abuse that power and influence, and then he'll go down, and the church will be destroyed.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Right? And so it just happens over and over and over. Yeah. I'm like, I don't know what the right way to do it is. And just like... And then when COVID happened, everything came to a standstill, and I kind of asked myself, am I only doing church so I can play guitar? Yeah. That question kind of like... Because I was like, at the last church I was at, like, our music pastor was on The Voice. Oh, cool. He was like a touring musician from the US. Like I was playing music at a fairly high level by Canadian Christian standards. Okay. And so that made me feel important and stuff like, but it was, once you stop doing it, it was just like, I don't know how, like, I'm not much of a Bible reader. I'm not much of a reader, period. Like I have my own kind of like I'm still very much a God guy.
Okay.
But like I'm just kind of doing it on my own terms.
That's cool. So that was a really cool walkthrough, like your experience with the church. So where would you say, let me ask you now what your stance is now, right? You're still just
I'm
describe
like
it to
I
me.
said, I'm still a God guy, and
Yeah.
I think that like there's something really compelling about
I love
Jesus.
how you say God guy, like I'm an IPA guy, also a God
right.
guy.
Oh, IPAs stink.
Yeah.
And like I just like if Jesus is saving people, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Right. But like the reliability of the Bible, the church, all that stuff, I'm kind of like I don't really know.
Yeah.
And I kind of don't care.
Yeah. That's a great way to put it, because it's not atheist, it's the other thing where
agnostic.
Agnostic,
but I'd say
yeah.
I'm closer to Christian than I am to agnostic.
Yeah,
you
and
know?
it is
because agnostic is like I don't know.
Yeah.
Or I don't think we can know.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas I'm kind of more sure that a God exists, but I'm not like what that means in terms of like dictating how we behave in every single moment of our lives. I don't know if God really cares that much.
Yeah, that's really cool that you were able to go from, because a lot of people can't escape that maximalism once they get into religion.
Yeah.
It's really cool that you were open-minded enough to change your mind. And what I would say for the better, right? Like I would say that again, the church came in at an important part in your life where you kind of needed it.
Yeah.
And you use these experiences to form who you are and kind of evolve, and now you're here, which is, it's cool, because unfortunately I feel like a lot of people struggle to be open-minded enough to, in either direction. A lot of people are completely atheist and say never, right? And a lot of people are the opposite, right? Like super hardcore believers and would never question it, right? I would say being open-minded is the only, so like myself, I would say I'm agnostic completely, because I'm technically Orthodox, but then I've been studying science my whole life, and I obviously have learned a lot about that kind of stuff, and I don't know where I stand.
I think it's odd though that a lot of people like, I believe in science, but like science is just a method, right? Like it's just a method about being able to discover the patterns that exist in the natural world, right? But like science has to rely on the presupposition that like truth exists. Right? Like like science can't tell you if something is moral. Science can't tell you if something is beautiful. Like there's so many things about our existence that fall outside of the realm of science, right? It's just this one particular approach about discovering how the world works. But the interesting thing is that the world works in very kind of reliable ways.
I mean, the thing about science is that I don't think you're trying to uncover the truth as much as possible with the understanding that you'll never get there. All you're doing is putting up, you'll notice that in science there is no, true scientists will never say something is a fact, because that does not exist. The best possible theory exists with evidence to prove it until that is improved upon, right?
That's right.
So it's the theory of gravity, it's the theory of relativity, it's not the fact. Right?
Yeah, it's true until it's disproven.
Exactly.
Right? Or as true as it can be.
So I think if you're above a hobbyist, if you're an actual scientist, you're never saying anything with certainty. In fact, the most certain things we know, like constants, like the literal gravity, right? Whatever it is, 9.82 meters per second acceleration, right?
Yeah.
That we know it's a number with a degree of uncertainty if you get down to the bottom of it. There is still a factor of uncertainty to literally gravity.
Yes.
And we use that to build spaceships and planes that we transport hundreds of people on, and like they risk their life, right? There's still uncertainty involved in those things, which is kind of crazy to assume. But
that's like that, the whole crux of like, did you watch Oppenheimer?
Yeah, I love it. Like it has everything I love.
That little bit, I actually hated it. I was so bored, but I did get the takeaway, which is that nuclear weapons provide a very small possibility of igniting the atmosphere.
Yeah, no, that was there was a part in the movie where he said that it's a chain reaction, right? Because he was making the atomic bomb through nuclear fission, and there's a possibility that once it happens, it ignites. Our atmosphere is actually, like, people don't know this, I think it's mostly nitrogen.
Yes,
right.
That's why the sky is blue, right? That's like what it.
I'm not sure about that, but it's not entirely oxygen or whatever. It's nitrogen, hydrogen,
what we
oxygen.
breathe is very little oxygen, actually. Yeah.
but essentially the hydrogen, like he was worried that a chain reaction would occur, that it's a chain reaction, right? So it combusts, and then all the nitrogen or oxygen or hydrogen or whatever he was worried about in the atmosphere would combust, and the entire world would explode.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
that was like that was the message for us today, is that these weapons, there is the possibility, however small, that could happen.
No, so that was disproven. That did not happen.
Wasn't that?
No, but what he was saying at the end, I think, is he says that his whole message at the end was that even though the reaction did not start that chain reaction that would ignite the entire atmosphere, he's worried that the bomb did cause a chain sequence of events that might eventually lead to the destruction of the universe.
Oh, okay.
Right? So it's not that, so that small possibility did not happen. But
That time.
at that time, no, but they did a test and it didn't happen. So
No,
it's safe.
but I mean, like, I thought it was what they came away with from the test. At least what the movie said was
He's saying that
like, it's the possibility of igniting the atmosphere is like almost zero, but not totally zero.
but not zero. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no. He was, before they did the test, they were worried that was a possible outcome. They did the
Yes.
test and they realized no, it's not going to happen. But what he meant is that he created a technology that now opens the door to a sequence of events that eventually ends the
Could.
world.
Yeah, okay,
right?
gotcha, yeah.
So it's not that happened, but he's saying that it might have happened from a different completely perspective.
Mm.
That the fact that now the world has this technology that literally like use these bombs to destroy, the
Everything,
world.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's what he meant.
Yeah,
right?
okay.
So that I love that movie because it combines science and history.
Yeah.
And like everything that I love, because I like studying World War II history specifically, just for fun. But yeah, so now that's cool. So now you would say you're what'd you say? Not an agnostic, closer to still Christian than
still
agnostic,
Christian, but like loose.
loose. Okay,
Yeah.
that's cool. That's cool. I like that. Like I said, I like that you were able to change your opinion and keep your mind open, because I feel like we're losing that a lot these days. A lot of people are very maybe it's with social media, but I think it's always been like this. I think
I think part of it maybe could have been the fact that like because I wasn't raised in it.
yeah,
It never totally took.
Yeah.
Like it was never like it never shaped my entire worldview.
yeah. I think that as people get older, unfortunately, and learn more, they think they become smarter, and they become more one-sided with their views. It's harder
Yeah.
to change their opinion, whereas kids are open-minded and very creative. There is even this thing
Yes.
called it's a thing in psychology where there is on a graph of like how much you know to how much you learn about a subject to how much you actually know, where you're starting to learn, and as you're exponentially learning something about a subject in the beginning,
Yeah.
you reach this fool's peak where you think you know a lot,
Yeah.
enough to, but like you've learned enough to have ideas about this subject, but you don't know enough to truly understand its breadth, that you think you're an expert.
Yeah.
And then as you learn more, you kind of drop to this valley of despair.
Yeah.
And then eventually you get back up to where you can actually kind of,
Well, it's not like it's the concern about like doctors as they get older aren't necessarily better because they're not improving their skills.
sure. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there's this. I did this at work. I can't remember the exact test, but it's like you get a certain amount of pieces of tape and pieces of like uncooked spaghetti. Mm-hmm. And your goal is to make like a tower that can be as high as it can.
Yeah.
And what they were saying is that like when kids actually do it way better than adults.
Yeah.
Because they they have no ultimate vision of what they want it to be. They just know
Yeah.
it needs to get higher. And so they course correct as they go. Whereas with adults, they've got like a vision of what it should be. And then they try to build that and
Yeah.
ultimately end up failing.
Yeah.
Because they don't, their thought
They're too
process is
fixated on the end result.
They're too rigid on the end result.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, an issue I have in comedy that it gives me a huge writer's block, because I'm like, I want it to be X, and like when it doesn't do that, I get discouraged.
And I think that's something. There we go. There's an example of something that you learned in your own way, and that I learned through sports. Right?
Yeah.
It's a huge thing in sports psychology to. When you're in the zone, you're completely focused on the process.
Yes.
And to become too results oriented is something that takes you away from the process itself, right?
Yeah.
So when you're playing any sport, you have to be in the moment, focused on like what you're doing now. And right, you can extrapolate that to what we're doing, taking it day by day,
Yeah.
and not being too focused on, oh, did I get this show? Am I doing this? Just do the shows, get funnier, put out the content, and do your best now, and then see what happens.
Yeah, I had a comic based out of Oakland told me, he's just like, don't focus on opportunities as a comic. Don't focus on opportunities, focus on jokes, because jokes are your opportunities.
Yeah.
And I really took that to heart.
Yeah, just keep getting better and keep doing it. So so you got into comedy at 38, and now you're obsessed with it, I guess you would say. You're passionate about it.
Oh yeah.
And now you want to do it full time eventually.
Yeah, I think I want to. Yeah, I think I've got time, because like I remember Shane Gillis was on Rogan and he said like I didn't put out my first special till I was 10 years in.
Yeah.
And Rogan was like, yeah, that sounds about right. So like, writing is hard. I talk to people who have been doing it longer than me, and they're still saying the same thing. It's hard. It's hard to get good, usable, reliable material. Like you gotta, I try to do the Atomic Habits thing and just keep cranking out jokes. Like if you write more jokes, then you'll write more better jokes, and then you'll have a collection of better jokes.
And you have the advantage of having a lot of experiences, right? Like a lifetime full of different kinds of experiences to draw from, right?
Yeah.
You're a father. I know you have
I got 2 kids.
You got 2 girls, right?
That's right.
That's really, did that change you at all? Like how was that, becoming a father? When how old are they?
12 and 9.
Okay.
And it absolutely changes you. This is the thing. Like I feel like you're a smart guy. You got married young.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people like they are, the idea of getting married young to them is like they can't fathom it.
Yeah.
Right? Committing to anything, but it's like you're building the foundation of your life early. So like you cannot be in debt, like you're consolidating finances, building towards a future that you plan together. Like anyway, I wanted to have kids when I was young. I didn't want to be an old dad. I knew I wanted to be a dad, and I didn't want to be an old dad. So we had our first one when I was like 29 going on 30.
Yeah. Okay.
And but yeah, it definitely changes you, because like you love this person unselfishly. Mm-hmm. Right? Whereas in every other relation, it's a relationship of reciprocity.
Yeah.
Right? Even
absolutely.
in a marriage or a friendship,
an
employment, it's based on both people giving to one another. Whereas when you are the parent to a child, they don't give you anything, and you will give them all of yourself.
Everything,
right?
yeah.
It's like, imagine a relationship where there isn't a hint of jealousy.
Yeah.
Right. Like they're like,
and that's almost impossible to imagine until you probably have a child.
That's why they say it's like you won't know until you have them. But it is the most like. It is a life-changing relationship. Like it increased my empathy. Like my wife said, you started treating me better. You loved me better. Yeah. After we had kids.
That's really interesting because so I am quite recently married and pretty young, and honestly I didn't expect it from myself either. Yeah. It just kind of happened, and I met the right person, and you know what they say, like when you know, that's yes. kind of how it went.
That's what I tell guys all the time. Yeah. Like find a beautiful, smart, loyal girl and marry her as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Because now also it's interesting because I don't have a very I'm kind of a public person now. I have like a online presence, and I met my wife before I blew up on social media or started pursuing comedy full time. But I'm very interested to have hung around with enough like very successful people and been in those when I was in Austin or LA to people where they're at a level of success where I'm like talking to them and I almost want to ask them this question. I don't know them well enough, but I'm like, being in that position where you've succeeded and you're a public person, how does that affect your relationship with others? How do you know whether you're talking to people and they're interested in you for who you are versus if they just want something from you, right? Yeah. You know what I mean? So I'm very happy that
I don't like the idea of getting my picture taken with a celebrity.
Yeah.
Or like, even I feel like the greatest gift you can give to a celebrity is to not talk to them.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it is true.
Right, unless they want to unless they want to talk to you.
Yeah.
Right, unless you've got some reason to be talking, like you're working together. But like just being a fan on the street, like
yeah, and I found that I had a weird experience in LA where I was doing a really cool show, and then I was in the green room after, and I got trapped in a conversation with some random lawyer that said he like brokered some big reality TV show deal for like 20 minutes. He was trying to explain. I barely even this guy didn't even tell me his name. He trapped me in a conversation for 20 minutes trying to explain to me why he was like worthy of being in this room, because I didn't know who he was. He just saw me do the show, and he was almost trying to justify his worth to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where I'm like, dude, like just let's talk about like fucking sports or something. I don't care.
But I find I do that in comedy though. Like I find like, oh, I've done this. Like you're trying to like, I think I've trying to stay away from that now. But like you find
to catch yourself.
Your insecurities like just pour out sometimes.
Yeah. So I think no. So getting it back to like having kids and being married, those more pure relationships where like, you know, there's marriage and then again your children, which is like the purest relationship you can have, are very important to just ground you in life.
Yes.
And especially in this path that we're trying to pursue, which at the end of the day, your success is reliant upon being a well-known person, right? Like if you want to succeed in this industry, fame is a part of that.
Yeah.
And it's a part of the package. You can't be a successful comedian without people knowing your name.
Yes.
And it's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
Which is it's tough because some people are just kind of thrown at it out of the gate, and I think it's very cool to be able to build that up slowly. It's much better to be able to go kind of level by level until one day you're at that high level. Yeah,
where it almost doesn't even, I think that's one of the benefits with comedy is it's something that you work through.
Yeah.
Whereas there are like the Haktua girl.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Like it's almost like winning the lottery.
That's funny. But is it for her? Because she was just a teacher. She didn't know this was.
She's not even a teacher. She's a student. She was like she was like a teaching assistant or something like that.
Ask any comedian; they would love to have a clip go viral like that. But for her,
but here's the thing, though: is I don't want to be the comic. This is why I've been backing off social media stuff. I know I need to get on it, but I don't want to be the person that doesn't deliver with my stand up.
Right? Yeah, that is important. Yeah.
Right? I got a good 20. Yeah. But like I'm not close to a headlining set yet. Not even remotely close to a solid for specials worthy 45.
Absolutely.
Right. And so like I would hate to get that spotlight on me and then have people come see me and be disappointed.
Yeah, but I think don't sell yourself short. I think if an opportunity presents itself, I know I've definitely jumped on stuff that I wasn't ready for.
Yeah.
And I was like, I had, for example, I've when Christina asked me to open for her, I've never been even close to doing something like that.
Yeah.
And she didn't ask me if I was. She's like, do you want to do it? I'm like, yes.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing though. If the opportunities come, you gotta take them. And sometimes the opportunities come when you feel like you're not quite ready.
Yeah.
Those are the best because they force you to get ready.
It's exactly what happened.
So,
and then every time you do that and you're around people like that, every time I come back here, I feel like I level up just by being around people like that. Like that's why having a mentor, I think, is huge because there is being around somebody that's been there, done that is truly, it's like, there's reading a book where you can learn all these pieces of advice. And then there's having a mentor that can tell you and help you apply them to. And then the most important way to learn these lessons, I think, is through experience. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like there's going to be no substitute for experience. But like it's nice to have somebody who's walked that journey before to be able to tell you, okay, you can expect this. You should try to be doing this now. Yeah. Now that you're here, try to do this. Right. Whereas I couldn't imagine just going through it totally lost.
Yeah.
Or just figuring it out on your own. Like that's like what I said at the beginning, right? There isn't necessarily a better or a good or a bad way to do it, but there are efficient and inefficient ways of doing it.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome, man. So we covered a lot today. We're coming up on an hour.
Sweet.
Yeah, I think we'll cap it there. Is there anything else I wanted to ask you? We talked about, stand up. We talked about your faith and now how you got here and all that cool stuff. That's awesome. Do you have anything you want to plug or, oh yeah, I know there's something I wanted to ask you about. You're touring a lot now. You're doing this Morning Wood tour, right? Yeah. So that's definitely helped you level up.
Tour, but it's more just
hey,
like,
man, don't sell yourself short.
No, but it's like, but yeah, it's been great because it used to be where like, I wasn't getting to do a lot of longer sets. I wasn't getting to do 15 to 20s, and now I'm doing them all the time. Yeah. Right? And so now I feel like I got on the corner roster. So now I'm doing, that's like 15 is the baseline there. So it's like, I feel very competent at doing that now. So, and just getting out in front of different people and I don't know. Yeah, it was the right time to start doing that stuff. And yeah, I think it's been really helpful. And it also shows you the behind the scenes of like putting on your own shows.
Oh yeah. That's tough, man. That's
promoting them and getting people out. But I did one out in the east of Toronto. I did one I put on by myself separate from Morning Wood and sold it out. And man, it's a good experience to like just get out there and get in front of rowdy crowds who want to have a good time. And but yeah, that's what make you realize so many Toronto comics will talk about is how like the city isn't where it really is. Yeah. The city's where you kind of develop open mic, do all that stuff, but where the money is, where you're going to be working, that's out of the city.
Out of the city, 100%, yeah. Because, the city is where other touring acts come in to make their money, right? Yes. From the places we were talking about that are in the States or wherever. But for us, if you're based here, you have to get out of the city, right?
Absolutely.
How many times can you put on a show for however many, like, even if you have 1 million followers from across the world, how many are in Toronto? And then if you put on one show, right, you have to wait a certain amount of time until you have a new act to refresh that. So you can't be making a living in the city, right? It just logistically doesn't make sense.
No, like if you got a weekly in Toronto, what, like you're gonna just do the same shit every week? Like it's impossible. Exactly. It's impossible. So
and so I mean, so it's good that you're doing that. Like, plug anything else you have.
I mean, I got my podcast Half-Hearted. If I can get my internet connection to improve, I've got a few episodes in the can that I'm really excited to release, and I'm gonna get some more people in. And man, I'm just working. I'm showcasing at Yucks again next week, and like I'm just like I said, I'm just trying to get as good as I can be, so when the opportunities come, I'm ready.
That's a good mentality to have. Great talking to you, man.
You too, buddy. Thanks for having me.
It's cool to see you do all these things and keep improving. And, we'll do it again sometime. And we can talk about all the stuff we've done since then, how we've leveled up. But
sounds good.
Until then, thanks for coming here. Thanks for listening, guys. And focus on the process. See ya.